Chants de Maldoror. Second book, part 8, by Comte de Lautreamont. 8. When I hear soprano uttering her vibrant and melodious notes, my eyes are filled with a hidden flame. Flashes of pain shoot across them, and the burst of alarm bell and cannonade resound in my ears. What can be the reason for this deep loathing of everything related to man? If those harmonies are played on the chords of an instrument, I listen in delight to the pearly notes wafting in cadence through the elastic waves of the atmosphere. Sense conveys to my hearing an impression so sweet as to melt nerves and thought. The magic poppies of an ineffable drowsiness envelope like a veil filtering the light of day. The active power of my senses and tenacious strength of my imagination. The story is told that I was born in the arms of deafness. In the first years of my childhood, I could not hear what was said to me. When with the greatest difficulty they had taught me to speak, it was not until after I had read on a sheet of paper what someone had written that I could, in turn, communicate the thread of my ideas. One day, woeful day, I had grown in beauty and innocence. Everyone admired the intelligence and goodness of the divine youth. Many a conscience blushed inwardly when it contemplated those clear features in which his soul was enshrined. No one approached him without veneration, for they had noticed in his eyes the look of an angel. But no, I knew only too well that the happy faces of youth would not flower perpetually, wreathed in capricious garlands on high, modest, and noble brow, which all mothers used to kiss with frenzied devotion. It was beginning to seem to me that the universe, with all its starry vault of impassable and tormentingly mysterious globes, was not perhaps the most imposing thing I had dreamt of. And so, one day, tired of trudging along the steep path on this earthly journey, trudging along like a drunkard through the dark catacombs of life, I slowly raised my splenetic eyes, ringed with bluish circles, towards the concavity of the firmament, and I, who was so young, dared to penetrate the mysteries of heaven. Not finding what I was seeking, I lifted my eyes higher and higher still, until I saw a throne made of human excrement and gold, on which was sitting, with idiotic pride, his body draped in a shroud of unwashed hospital linen, he who calls himself the Creator. He was holding in his hand the rotten body of a dead man, carrying it in turn from his eyes to his nose, and from his nose to his mouth, and once it reached his mouth, one can guess what he did with it. His feet were dipped in a huge pool of boiling blood, on the surface of which 2 or 3 cautious heads would suddenly rise up like tapeworms in a chamber pot, and as suddenly submerge again, swift as an arrow. A kick on the bone of the nose was the familiar reward for any infringement of regulations occasioned by the need to breathe a different atmosphere. For after all, these men were not fish. Though amphibious at best, they were swimming underwater in this vile liquid, until finding his hands empty, the Creator, with the first 2 claws of his foot, would grab another diver by the neck, as if with pincers, and lift him into the air out of the reddish slime, delicious sauce. And this one was treated in the same way as his predecessor. First, he ate his head, then his legs and arms, and last of all, the trunk, until there was nothing left, for he crunched the bones as well, and so it continues for all the hours of his eternity. Sometimes he would shout, "I have created you, so I have the right to do whatever I like to you. You have done nothing to me. I do not deny it. I am making you suffer for my own pleasure." And he would continue his savage meal, moving his lower jaw, which in turn moved his brain-bespattered beard. Oh, reader, does this not last-mentioned detail make your mouth water? Cannot whoever wishes also eat brains just the same, which taste just as good and just as fresh, caught less than a quarter of an hour before in the lake, the brains of a fish? My limbs paralyzed, utterly dumb, I contemplated this sight for some time. Thrice I nearly keeled over, like a man in the throes of an emotion which is too strong for him. Thrice I managed to keep my feet. No fiber of my body was still. I was trembling like the lava inside the volcano. Finally, my breast so constricted that I could not breathe the life-giving air quickly enough. My lips opened slightly, and I uttered a cry so piercing that I heard it. The shackles of my ears were suddenly broken. My eardrum cracked as the shock of the sounding mass of air which I had expelled with such energy, and a strange phenomenon took place in the organ condemned by nature. I had just heard a sound. A fifth sense had developed in me. But what pleasure could I have derived from such a realization? Since then, no human sound has reached my ears without bringing with it the feeling of grief which pity for great injustice arouses. Whenever anyone spoke to me, I remembered what I had seen one day above the visible spheres, and the translation of my stifled feelings into a violent yell, the tone of which was identical to that of my fellow beings. I could not answer him, for the tortures inflicted on man's weakness in that hideous Red Sea passed before my eyes, roaring like scorched elephants, and brushing with their wings against my singed hair. Later, when I knew mankind better, this feeling of pity was coupled with intense rage against this tiger-like stepmother whose hardened children know only how to curse and do evil. A brazen lie. They say that evil is the exception among them. That was long ago. Since then, I have not spoken a word to anyone. Oh, you, whoever you may be, when you are beside me, do not let any sound escape your vocal cords. Do not, with your larynx, strive to outdo the nightingale. And for yourself, do not on any account attempt to make your soul known to me by means of language. Maintain a religious silence, uninterrupted by the least sound. Cross your hands humbly on your breast, and lower your eyelids. I have told you this, and since that vision revealed to me the supreme truth, too many nightmares have sucked my throat, by day and by night, for me to have any courage left to renew, even in thought, the sufferings I underwent in that infernal hour, the memory of which remorselessly pursues me. Oh, when you hear the avalanche of snow falling from the high mountain, the lioness in the barren desert lamenting the disappearance of its cubs, the tempest accomplishing its destined purpose, the condemned man groaning in prison on the eve of his execution, and the savage octopus telling the waves of the sea of his victory over swimmers and the shipwrecked, then you have to acknowledge it. Are not these majestic voices finer than the sniggering of men?